The International Film Industry Conference, or IFIC, first conducted by the Film Development Council of the Philippines, or FDCP, in 2017, aims to bring together international and local experts to share and discuss the latest trends, opportunities, platforms, and cooperation globally that producers and filmmakers can explore for the development, production, and distribution of their projects, with the intent of crossing beyond local borders. The IFIC strives to continue the synergy of the members of the industry by featuring experts and professionals this September 2021. This event will give a platform to further explore opportunities, challenges, and new norms in the film industry as we push and thrive to move forward in a global pandemic. With the recent successes of original Filipino animation contents, the Philippine animation sector continues to gain global traction in the industry. As part of the 2021 ASEAN Rock Workshop series, let's hear from the Filipino creators as they share their experiences and journey in bringing Philippine animation to the world. Our moderator for this panel is a consultant on IP ecology, strategy, and development. He does business development and IP ecology for several animation studios, as well as comic creators, both in the Philippines and abroad, and is the co-founder and current president of the Creative Content Creators Association of the Philippines, or CCAP. He is also part of the advisory board of the British Council's Creative Communities Learning Labs. He is one of the lead producers for SoundMind Music Productions, a specialized sound and music project studio, alongside the veteran composer and sound designer James Amargo. Our mentor has written music for both local and international video games, TV shows, movies, musicals, and live events. His latest single, Pride, as well as the rest of his music, is currently available on digital music platforms like Spotify, Amazon Music, iTunes, and Apple Music. Let's get to know more about animation directly from our panels with Magoo del Mundo.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. It is my pleasure and privilege to introduce the next four speakers who will be joining us this afternoon. So our first speaker is a founding member and chief creative development officer of Base Entertainment, a studio based out of Jakarta in Singapore that develops, finances, produces, and distributes content for both the Indonesian and international markets. She is the executive producer and writer for the Netflix original anime series Trese. Currently, Base has a slate of projects in varying stages of development and pre-production, including a slate of movies that are co-productions with CJ Entertainment and Ivanhoe, the first of which is Joko Anwar's film Impetigore, which has had its world premiere at Sundance in 2020 and won the top prize at the Busan International Fantastic Film Festival. Prior to founding Base, she spent 14 years in New York and Los Angeles, where she worked in development for studios such as New Line Cinema and the Walt Disney Company. She then went on to be a producer and an executive at Miller Guff Inc., a production company whose principals were Al Guff and Miles Miller, where she worked on company projects such as the TV series Smallville and feature films The Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor, Hannah Montana the movie, and I Am Number 4, among a long list of projects that she has worked and been a part of. She's also a consultant for the Dino De Laurentiis company in Los Angeles. Everybody, let's please welcome Miss Tanya Yuson.
Hi everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having me on. Hi Magoo.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you so much for being here. And our next panelist supposedly grew up in a haunted house and was told to sleep early because there were aswang outside their bedroom window. Who would have known that these stories would later influence and inspire him to write the comic book Trese with co-creator and artist Kajo Baldissimo. Their comic book is a 3-time winner of Best Graphic Literature of the Year in the Philippine National Book Awards from 2009, 2011, and 2012. He's also the co-creator and writer of the Dark Colony Book 1, Mikey Resho and the Secret of the Demon Dungeon, which also won the same award in 2013. He was a co-editor for Alamat Comics, The Lost Journal of Alejandro Pardo, Creatures and Beasts of Philippine Folklore, and Sound, a comic book anthology co-created with Caris Locke, published by Difference Engine. Difference Engine rather. He now works in Denmark as one of the creative leads in the Lego agency. He lives there with his wife and son, far, far away from Enyaswang, or so they think. So, everybody, please welcome Mr. Budjette Tan.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Hi, Magoo. Great to
Hi,
be
Budjette.
here.
Thanks for being here. And now, for our next two speakers, we would love to introduce them through this wonderful and amazing video. So please keep your eyes glued.
Hello, we are Rocket Sheep, a tiny indie animation studio from the Philippines. We are made up of 5 artists and 2 dogs. We regularly do commissioned work for advertising and music videos so that we don't go hungry as we pursue our passion of producing our own films. We have made a number of shorts through the years and have made 2 feature films so far. The first one, Saving Sally, was a mix of live action and animation. It's about a boy who secretly loves a girl, but the girl has a penis monster for a boyfriend. It was mostly self-produced but also made possible by the CNC French Film Fund. It took us 12 soul-crushing years to make, mostly because of our own inexperience and lack of bulk cash at hand. Thankfully, it had a theatrical run in the Philippines and won many awards in genre film festivals back in 2017. Although we fumbled the worldwide distribution because we had no idea how to do that. Our second film is a soap opera satire about the illicit affair between a proletariat pussycat and a bourgeois business dog, entitled Hayop Ka, or You Animal in English. This time, we vowed not to make the same noob mistakes, so we partnered with a much more experienced producer who had rock-hard abs and would handle distribution and marketing. We also managed to complete the film in under 4 years, so yay to progress! But the pandemic happened, and all our original theatrical plans were destroyed. Hayop Ka went to Netflix instead, and was released across Asia, and we will do festivals in the Western world this year. We are currently working on a couple of other films. Light Lost, a film for kids, is in the development stage. It's about an adventurer who loses his partner to an interdimensional portal. He goes through many hardships to find her, only to realize that she does not want to be rescued. Our other film, Jaja Zaturna vs. the Amazonistas of Planet X, is currently in pre-production. It's the story of a shy gay man who finds a magical rock that transforms him into a flamboyant female superhero, ready to defend her hometown from rampaging monsters, malicious zombies, and snooty alien fashionistas. We have been lucky enough to receive prize grants from Bifan and Locarno. We are securing partners so we won't have to keep selling our kidneys. As filmmakers, we have yet to experience financial success. We remain a struggling studio, doing our best in figuring out how to make animated filmmaking in the Philippines a sustainable endeavor. Our long-term advocacy is to encourage local animation production. In the global animation industry, the Philippines is a go-to nation for outsourcing animation services. We are home to thousands of talented animators, but sadly, we are not known for ideating and producing our own work. There have been less than 10 animated feature films in the entire 100-year history of Philippine cinema, and we want to continue adding to that, while also hoping that little by little, someday, Filipino animators can be known not just as service providers, but as creators as well. For now, we consider ourselves very lucky to have food money and the ability to continue working on our films. We love what we do and we hope you watch our stuff. Thank you!
That was so cute.
I want one. I want an animated intro just like that, Tanya.
Yeah, I think Avid's the
Avid's,
only one who can do that for us.
yeah, Avid's raising the bar of introductions, definitely. So thanks everybody for being here this afternoon. Tanya, Budjette, and Avid, thank you for being here. And we hope that Manny can join in later due to the internet connections, Philippine internet connections that he's having at the moment. So so anyway, at this point, we'd like to thank everybody, and maybe we could ask and to just get this ball rolling. How did your project start? How did you guys start the ball rolling on your respective projects that made it in the global scene? And what were your challenges and what were your milestone successes in getting there? Maybe we could start with Tanya.
Um, I know maybe some people have heard this story before, but actually it started with a cold call to Budjette from someone he had no idea who it was, and that person was me. I was in Manila. I'd been working in the States, and I'd come home and was looking, as a producer for material to produce, and came across Trese and read it and loved it. And I thought, at that point, no one was really making anything from the Philippines, but I thought
Hmm.
the story was good enough where, we could take the risk to just start working on it and see how. So I, through mutual friends, I got Budgette's info. I messaged him, and we eventually met up. And he said, "All right, let's try it." And we both didn't know where it was gonna go. And it's been a long journey, but we finally had traction and a breakthrough, and the premiere of the series this year, which I can't believe it's just been this year, Budge.
It,
So
it feels like
that's
it
how we
was, yeah,
started.
Yeah.
a lifetime
Budget.
ago.
Yeah. Budget. Would you like to share how you got roped in and how this entire journey has been for you? I guess. Yeah.
Roped in.
Yeah, I mean, when we started when me and Kajo started the book, we started it because we wanted a break from our work in advertising. We just kept we were photocopying it just for the heck of it. But eventually, when we learned about and met the publisher of Jaja Zaturna, it was one of those. They were one of the few, if not the only, publisher at that time that was investing or putting supporting genre stuff. Because at that time, Visprint was the publisher of Kiko Machine, Jaja
Hmm.
Zaturna, and then they also published horror books by David Hontiveros. So again, at that time period, no one else was doing stuff like that. So we pitched it to Visprint and got in, and that's how the book eventually ended up in Tanya's hands. And yes, what Tanya skipped was the 9 years of pitching it as a live action adaptation until finally there was the opportunity to pitch it as an animated.
There's a very interesting and exciting journey there for the comic book. Avid, having two successful animated projects out on Netflix, would you care to share the story of how those respective projects started and what has been the journey so far?
Okay, so the first film took 12 years, and I don't want to talk about that because that took 12 years. The second film, um, where which me and Manny ideated, was meant to be something that could be done in under a year. So we applied for one of the festival grants, the local
Hmm.
festival grants. We have a lot of that every year. I mean, we have 3 major festival grants, and that's all it was meant to be. Just something that we're gonna do in 1 year, as opposed to working on something for 12 years. And we were selected as a semi-finalist, and we presented to a panel of smart people who then asked us what our advocacy was, and then us, not being very smart, just laughed and said we have no advocacy. And so we lost, and we didn't get the grant. But thankfully, we had a meeting with the people of Spring Films, who is headed by Erickson. He's the manager of Yang Constantino, also, who I did a lot of music videos for. And we had lunch at this expensive steak restaurant, and Mr. Abs himself joined us, and me and Manny, where is he there? Me and Manny
There.
looked at the menu, and our eyes popped out because everything was 4 digits. Every meal, everything on the menu was 4 digits, and we were whispering to each other, "Okay, let's just share this and split our share of the bill, okay?" And so we just got the smallest item and we shared it, and then everybody else in the meeting had like large steaks. And then Piolo picked up the tab, and then we were all like, "Damn it, we should have gotten large steaks." But then they took care of the a big chunk of production, the financial aspect and the showbiz aspect. So that's our steak. So that was our reward after that. But we should have gotten a bigger steak because we have never set foot in that restaurant again because we could never afford it.
Well, hopefully soon, no? With the success of all the animation productions and projects you guys have been doing. So we're looking forward to that bigger chunk of steak for you and Manny next time. Um, so one of the questions that's been popping around actually is, how did you guys respectively secure co-production deals? And how were you able to get your properties to get on Netflix and to go international? Aside from the festival route that is traditionally done. So open for anybody who'd like to take that up first.
Ours isn't really a co-production deal. Ours is basically a
Mhm.
straight sale to the
Okay.
platform. So it's it's a commissioned work because it's a Netflix original. It's Netflix first original out of Southeast Asia, and it's Filipino. So that was like a good flag to have for us.
Mhm.
And it really is just a matter of finding the right partner. As Budge said, we had gone around with the project. We were at different festivals, like we did meetings in the Philippines, in LA, Hong Kong, like Singapore, pretty much everywhere. And everyone loved the story. That wasn't the question. I think it was a matter of like which platform. And at that time when we started, there weren't the OTTs as strong as they are now. So the
I see.
Netflix of the
Yeah.
world, the Disney Pluses,
Hmm.
it wasn't a force to kind of even consider stuff coming out of Southeast Asia. So even for live action, it's also a tricky probability because at that time it was really only theatrical, meaning films in the theaters that would
Hmm.
be viable to have maybe the budget close to what we would need to produce something like Trese live action. And even at that time, it was problematic because the returns on local films was not going to justify the budget that we needed. So we had to, unfortunately, not push through with some partnerships because we couldn't see the viability of it. And then for
Hmm.
others, it just wasn't in their agenda. So it was also timing for us where Netflix was seeing success after Castlevania and wanted to, and
Mm.
was going to, branch out in Southeast Asia. And
Yeah.
then, we were prepared. We were prepared. We knew what the series was. We knew what it could be. We understood kind of the targets, and we had a very good story. So that all of those factors helped us, and it's also because we understood what Netflix was looking for at the time and how we could meet that, which then resulted in us partnering with Netflix.
To
Nice.
add to Tanya's little story, fun little fact, right after we released Saving Sally, studios asked me what I wanted to do, and one of the things I said, I was very quick to answer, was something like Trese. And of all people, Regal Films talked to Tanya and Budget. I got them. They talked, and of course, it wasn't gonna fly. But see, I mean,
Yeah,
and
I mean,
thank God.
we, we're all, for us, it's like, yeah, we want to talk to everybody that's interested
Hmm.
because if they're fans like us and they wanted the best for it, it was just like, in terms of what's going to work out, what's not going to work out. You just kind of had to weigh all
Yeah.
those factors.
Yeah. Yeah. For and Avid, so for your properties, how was that? How were you able to secure a co-production or acquisition deal? And how was it? How was that process of going international for you? I mean, the you know
It's
the
a lot of tears and a lot of sold kidneys, a lot of internal organs sold, and a lot of missed opportunities. Like when we were, I never understood. See, the problem when we were doing Saving Sally was all I thought was
Mhm.
that all we needed to do was make a film. And that was the hardest lesson because the film itself is just half the work.
Yeah.
There's so much that happens after that. So uh, I was actually very, 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 very lucky at the very beginning of Saving Sally to have the interest of a sales agent called Wild Bunch, which is this um, massive sales agent in Europe, and they were able to secure the grant that I needed to get the production started. But since I took so long making the film
Hmm.
because I didn't know how to make a film, that that relationship soured and died, and they don't like me anymore because I wasn't able to deliver a film. I did not understand what I lost at that time. It's like, okay, they got me the grant, and that's fine. It was only during when I was doing the festival rounds, and I had there were other films produced by that company
Mhm.
that was making the rounds, and you could see the difference. I would come to a festival and peddle my postcards to anyone who and invite people to watch, while the film produced by the people who I have pissed off has a poster already hanging all over town, and they have a whole machinery to promote a film. So these guys, they were big, and I destroyed that relationship. So yeah, so not cool. So after that, I studied, like, okay, so I made a lot of mistakes making that film. This time, let's do it correct. So I spent a lot of time in labs. I
Mm.
and all through the good graces of the FDCP. Like, I was sent to Tenerife, to Full Circle, all
Mhm.
just really studying up how to to do the non-creative parts of doing a project. So I learned all this stuff, and I was able to secure. We were able to secure a festival. The festival debut for Hayop Ka, based on a simple work in progress, which is unheard of. I mean,
Mhm.
normally you need to get your film produced first and you peddle it. But since I went through the labs and I made contacts, I was able to get connections to get somebody to watch, because that's the hardest thing in making anything. You can make the best film or series or short film, but getting somebody to watch it doesn't matter
Yeah.
how good
Yeah.
it is. Just getting
Yeah.
somebody the time to watch it. So you need to figure out how to be in the same room with these people who will make the decisions, and that's no easy feat. So that's attending a lot of parties and get-togethers and markets, being on the floor, just getting to know people and sitting with them over lunch and making a genuine connection, because nobody will want to watch anything when you're just peddling them something like, hey, watch this. Nobody
Yeah.
ever responds to that. So it's a really long game of meeting people, and then really just talking to them and having no agenda, and then someday they just ask you, what are you working on, and then you show them, and they're receptive to it. So pretty much that was the route for it. And we had all our plans, but of course the pandemic happened,
Yeah.
we were we just made the pandemic decision to go straight to streaming, which wasn't the original plan. So yeah, so so
So
basically what I'm saying is, we don't know. I don't know. I still don't know what I'm doing. I'm still adjusting to this new world we're in. Hopefully, with the third film, third and fourth film, we do it better.
yeah. Yeah.
This is Manny.
Awesome. Thank.
This is Manny. This is this is Manny, by the
Hi,
way.
Manny. It's nice to see
He-
that you're able to connect na thanks to to the new place where you are. It's so nice to see you
I
here
made
with
it.
us. Yes, yes, and we are so excited that you are here. So yeah, so we were just like having a quick just a quick catch up lang, no? How the project started, what's the journey to the co-production international distribution that your respective projects are enjoying right now, right? So I've noticed that for both groups that there has been this like um it didn't happen overnight, right? It didn't happen like, oh, let's go to Netflix or let's go to the streaming platform and then, yay, it's there. So, were there any points, or yeah, points in this journey to getting to this international release to this platform that you felt like you needed to break through the a wall, or to you fought with frustration and just the hurdles of getting your stuff out there. Manny, would you like to share anything on that end?
So, hello. I think it's a lot like today, where I've prepared early since morning and trying to get my room production designed, and then all of a sudden at 1 o'clock I couldn't get through. So there's a lot of thinking on the feet and
Yeah.
obstacles. So
Yes.
I drove out, and thankfully a friend of mine has this nice office. I think one of the major obstacles was, first, the expectation was we wanted to be on the movies. And then there was discussion already upon the because of the pandemic, where we were able to be in contact with Netflix. But there's a finance side to that, because there's the upside of going theatrical and hopefully getting a good run there. But we were tied to Netflix and the budget, which was good, in the sense that it was probably the only option right about February. So I guess one of the main obstacles we had was delivering the film, because the artists were working from their homes. So there was a lot of challenge in terms of delivering files, and with Avid reviewing and the art director reviewing and getting up to par to the standard. So we were after a deadline, because we already committed to Netflix and we had a deal signed. So that was one of the obstacles, really pushing the people and motivating them to come up with something nice and make it to the deadline.
Thank you.
So basically, coming up with an entirely new workflow to meet the new normal.
Yeah.
Like suddenly we were not seeing each other, and you are dealing with. I mean, there were intangibles as well. Like working is one thing, but how do you work with people who are suddenly depressed because of how the world is?
Yeah.
I'm not a counselor. I'm not a. I'm just a director. Then suddenly you have people on your team who are feeling bummed out. Everybody is in this extraordinary situation where suddenly people are dying literally, and or people are living with anxiety, especially last year when the world was ending. So it was figuring out how to navigate those things. And I think any person who's tried to make a film will know the frustration of trying to get through contacts. So it's always very hard. Like people always ask me, "Hey, can you show my work to Netflix?" I'd always say it doesn't work that way. And even with us, even with so for example, we Hayop Ka had a deal with Netflix. You'd think I'd be able to get Saving Sally on very quickly. It didn't. It No, it didn't. It wasn't what I mean. I even asked Tanya for help, and she was able to contact someone, but all the leads go cold, and you just keep knocking. We got through Netflix through another producer who wanted to work with me for a project in the future, and I was like, okay, go take whatever commission you want. And it's like, no, I just want to work with you in the future, and he was our champion for that. So it wasn't even our producers for Hayop Ka who had a deal with Netflix that was able to get Saving Sally on Netflix. It was somebody else. So it's really, so I guess the important thing is to just talk to a lot of people, get to know a lot of people, be kind, sincere, be nice to people so they help you out.
Yeah. That's in the
Can I have a follow-up question for that? Teacher.
Go ahead, please.
No, I mean just to go to what the example that Avid just gave, because that's the same what do you call this request that I'm getting now. Whether it is a young comic book creator or someone who's older than me who says, I have this story, but again, they don't know anything about the film or TV industry, but they've got this, this story that they've written. It's self-published. I mean, and the expectation is that, can you just give me the email address of Netflix and I'll pitch it to them directly? I mean, what is a more? I mean, right now we're painting them this picture of, it is hard work, as Avid has mentioned, but it's like to a newbie. I mean, what is and someone with a story that they've done. I mean, how difficult is it, or just to set expectations right? Where should they go first? I mean, is it like a conference like this, or what would be the suggestion for someone who feels they've got a pretty interesting story to pitch?
I mean,
that's
for
a general
me-
question.
Yeah, for me, I think it's really building the traction for that story and finding the
Uh-huh.
audience to connect with it with that story. And it doesn't have to
Mm,
be animated right away. I mean, that's actually the
yeah,
beauty of animated works is you could actually start it out on the page and get
yeah,
it out, if not like old school analog, then digitally, nowadays, right? Like with the
yeah.
advent of webtoon and even self-publishing on that, the more your story connects with people, the more attention it will get, and then naturally the roads lead to it organically being picked up for another medium. I think that's kind of also what happened for Trese, in terms of, because somebody had recommended it to me. So if Budge hadn't put it out there, if Budge and Kajo hadn't put it out there as Ashcans, if they didn't hustle and eventually meet Nida to get it published, like I wouldn't have seen it. But it started
Yeah.
somewhere. They didn't start with like, let's set it up, because it might be where it's not, the bandwidth isn't that wide yet for a lot of projects, right? Like we hope these
Yeah.
are the start, but it could be a slower ramp up. And that's what I also try to tell students or forums I'm at. It's not automatic. But there is still work that can be done in the interim. And it really is connecting with an audience and connecting your story to that audience.
And on that, Tanya, so a question that's posited here is specifically why, for all of you, why do you think like Trese and Hayop Ka are actually connecting to these audiences beyond the Philippine shores and the Philippine culture, right? We've been seeing viewers from different cultures gravitating towards Hayop Ka and Trese, consuming the IP. So what are your thoughts on that? Why do you think that's happening? Coming from knowing the journey you guys have been through, understanding the industry that is, be it pre-pandemic or how it is now. Do you have any insight that you'd like to share regarding why you think that your specific local stories are crossing cultures?
There was Budge was on a really interesting podcast,
Uh-huh.
the Geekish Network podcast, Budge, where they pointed out, I really love this. Maybe you tell it better, actually, Budge.
Oh, my favorite quote, which I said I want to put it as a blurb at the back of the book, is
Totally.
yeah, the Geekish Network is produced by a Pinoy, but his barkada of geeks is a mix of Pinoys and African American.
African American in the
Mm.
US.
And one- and in the U.S. and one of them said this is the blackest Filipino anime they've ever seen. And they said that the I guess the situations that we showed as far as the Philippines is concerned is something that they could identify with. They could easily say that, oh, I know how that feels.
Yeah.
I know how it feels to be in that situation in this city. So there's a part of it that I guess is easily identifiable
Mm-hmm.
with the foreign audience. But then we bring in something that they've never seen before, so which is the Pinoy aspect of it, right? So they know it's a police drama, they know it's a police procedural, so they can identify. There's an anchor for them, but then at the same time, there's something new that just draws them into the universe.
And that's actually also one of the things that really drew me to it. And I think for Hayop Ka also has that framework of this, love
Mm.
triangle, which is very
Yeah.
universal. So for
Mm-hmm.
Trese and for both these projects, there is the accessibility to somebody who is not of the culture. Either,
Mm.
they didn't grow up in the Philippines or they're Filipino but grew up elsewhere.
Yeah.
There's a part that you'll understand. And then at the same time, when you get very specific, you actually become more universal. So if we're talking like emotionally specific, let's say relationships between lovers or relationships with found family, like, and it's very specific to the story you're trying to tell, that becomes accessible universally. Because you're talking about the human condition at that point.
Would Team Hayop Ka love to add or want to add to anything?
Actually, our experience is a bit different. I mean, Trese is a beloved property here in the Philippines. We came out to cancel. We were our initial release um, was to calls of boycott. So so it, we, I mean, if you check our letterbox score, we have we have very abysmal letterbox scores, and it was only when we started doing festivals that's when people started. Oddly enough, I mean, we got a lot of local fan art, but
Mhm.
within the critical film community, oh my God, we were the whipping boys. We were the Vincentiments of animation. So Um, we were actually very surprised that uh, when I guess when we it all started when we got selected for Annecy, which is I guess it's like the best animation festival in the world. So that gave us cred. So suddenly all the other just by being on that festival meant that the programmer saw something in our film, that it wasn't just some of course it was meant to be stupid, but I guess it was more than that to them. And so when I read the reviews from the foreign reviews, basically they like the cultural specificity. Did I say that
Mm.
right? That
Yep, yep.
they know it's not theirs. They know it's very foreign, and yet somehow they understand it as well. So again, and that ties up with our advocacy of repping your culture always, especially in animation and visual design, where local Pinoy artists are training to work for the Western or Japanese for the Western or Japanese scenes, where they can draw mechas, they can draw Marvel superheroes, but they can never draw tricycles. So just seeing a tricycle on film is something foreign something
Mhm.
unique for somebody in Europe. So it hooks them on that level, and they get it. They get our film. So and and we were even Manny just got an email last week from the Annie Awards asking us to submit, which is like, what the hell? Why are we being? We're suddenly part of this. Our stupid thing is part of this serious thing now, this serious network. So, do you have anything to add, Manny?
Yeah, because ours is pretty much in reverse, where we started
Uh-huh.
because parang we wanted to entertain. And then as we
Mhm.
went along, because we're here, like when I was applying to festivals, I would review our synopsis and add a bit of points. It's like the more that I applied to festivals, it's like knowing the film more in what it stood for. So I guess we were still trying to show the Filipino culture, which is very fresh to them, and we would assume that they're not very exposed to telenovelas. So to see something that is based on that, and something that makes humor out of that is
Mhm.
very fresh to them. So as Avid had said, it's really a surprise that we're getting such good reviews after like we were released in October locally. And I guess it turned out well that we didn't go for a worldwide deal with
Mhm.
Netflix, so that come January, as Avid had advised, we could already do festivals. So instead of like going festivals first and getting and being bought by a distributor or a agent, or a platform, ours was reversed. So we got bought first, and now we're doing the festivals, which is thankfully, turning out pretty well for us.
Yeah. Great. It's very exciting, and I love the stories that you guys are showing, the differences on the IP route to market, so to speak, and yet the lessons that at the end of the day, it's really make people connecting to your IP, to your narrative, to your stories, and to your characters, and to the conflict, even, and that's I think that's really awesome, knowing and showing to the aspiring animators, the storytellers in the Philippines, who now can realize that their works can actually, if they put the work into it, if they study the landscape behind it, if they are serious about it, have the potential to go beyond the borders of our country. And with that being said, what do you guys think is the future of Philippine animated narratives? fearless forecast in the next 5, 10 years?
Uh,
I think that's
well,
anybody's guess.
yeah. So, uh, but we're working with the kids of El Arcangel, so
Hmm.
so it's drug war. So it's monsters and the drug war. So I think a lot of stories were made in this period that is gonna
Mm.
bleed into the coming narrative. So yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, what I hope, between Hayop Ka and Saving Sally and then Trese is that it shows that there is a hungry Philippine audience for content that is our own. Stories that
Mm.
there is our own that want to be seen. And like I said, just to manage expectations, it's not going to be a flood right away, but if we all keep working at it, we can build. We can definitely build for a brighter future in terms of storytelling, both for animation and live action. But it, like, as you can see, like it took 12 years, it took 10 years. Like there is that work putting in. So maybe this breakthrough makes it a little bit easier for the next story to come
Yeah.
through, but it's still going to be a bunch of work. So it can be bright. We just have to be realistic of where we are right now, what our audience, how they're spending their money, what the obstacles are in the way. And if we all figure out how to work together to go beyond that and create this sustainable ecosystem, that's when the stories will start to flourish. Because
Mm.
it's really about finding that sustainable ecosystem between creators and audience, which also means creators, us not living in a vacuum. Because you don't connect to an audience, your story will live in that vacuum, right? So it's also in that space. So figuring out what will work takes all of us together, I think, to get to that, to get to where we want to be. And we all want, that space where we just see a plethora of stories that we see ourselves in. I think that's
Yeah.
the most exciting part.
Um, Budget, Manny, would you like to add to any of what was said?
As for in my case, I'm Magoo. We were just in the creative conference.
Yay! Congrats! Yeah.
Yeah, so my learning there was it's more for kids, and
Creative. Yeah.
although we pitched the spin-off of Hayop Ka, which hopefully gets made down the road, but we went in there with six other Filipino creators, and the lesson there is, I guess, apart from making films, if you have material for children, there's also an avenue for TV. There's a big market for that, so I would say just start creating your pitches and really apply and learn, and maybe once you get into a lab you start building your confidence, and you start believing in your story, and as difficult as it really is, at least you're progressing in small steps.
Yeah. Nice.
Now,
Thank you,
I
Manny.
find it curious that what I haven't seen from the Philippines, and maybe I'm just not in the right YouTube channels because my 5-year-old kid has screwed up the algorithm of my YouTube viewing, is that I haven't seen an amateur Pinoy animator just put out stuff there, right? I
Mm.
mean, I've, and again, because of my 5-year-old kid, I'm coming across a lot of animated shorts that are made in the US. And some of them range from really crude black and white drawings to, I forget the name of this CG spider. And this animator just started to make 30-second shorts of this really cute animated spider, and it's getting 10 million views. But I
Mm.
think going back to the point of create something, put it out there, I don't get this sense of it. And I know we've got a lot of animation students and animators and professional animators who are probably stuck doing a a service job. Um, but but yeah, I mean, I don't know where that push needs to happen, or I have a weird feeling it just needs to happen in one TikTok video of one Filipino animator uploading something, and that will, um, I don't know even know if it's a floodgates, but I guess it's in the same way. For me, if I go to Comic Con, I get a sense of this is what the creators are doing. This is how much. Uh, this is the maturity level of a comic book creator now. I can walk from one end of a Comic Con to the other end of a Comic Con, and I can see the maturity level of a Pinoy comic book creator. I'm not.
Mhm.
I don't know where to look at to find that as far as Filipino animators are concerned. So I might be wrong.
Go ahead, Avid.
There's actually a huge network. There's this genre called Pinoy animation, but it's not really short films. It's a bunch of kids who know how to animate and they narrate their lives. It's a lot. One of my I had one of my artists. I One of the people I was trying to hire before was so into that like when I met him, he had like 30 subscribers on his YouTube channel, and he keep messaging me about how I already have 45,000 and I should monetize it and all that. And these are things that I don't care about. But you know, and but and he would send me screen caps of how much I would earn if I monetize this, and I would watch his videos and I'd cringe because because it's really playing the game of like and subscribe and shout
Mm-hmm.
outs to this and that, but you could tell that he was following a model. He did his research, and now that the kid has over 100,000 subscribers and would plug the new gadget that this brand would send to him, and this is all in the span of a year and a half. So that is not my scene. I actually do not know anything about that. It doesn't hit my algorithm, but that scene exists. It's like it's not for me because I want to create traditional stories, but there
Mm-hmm.
is um, a huge, uh, a huge, a huge number of kids, and they're kids. They're very young because they just like to talk about life in quarantine, but it's in animated form. I mean, it's not polished or anything, but it's animated and it exists. And so, to the point that in the animation group that I'm an admin of, I direct all the people who would submit that sort of stuff to that other page where, because I don't want to clutter us with your
Yeah.
lives. Like I want to curate this that it's about production, like
Uh-huh.
traditional production. Do your animation vlogs elsewhere. That's another thing on its own. I don't want to hear about your crushes. I don't want to I don't want to hear about your heartbreak, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
proper it's storytelling. I mean, actually
Yeah.
they've defined it. They call it they've kind of owned the term already. When you say Pinoy animation and storytelling, you'd think short films or feature films. What that actually means to kids now, storytelling is telling your personal
Yours.
story about your experience yesterday, or how your mom made you wash the dishes and you forgot to do your modules. And it's very cringy for me as an old person, but I appreciate the fact that here is a generation of kids who don't
Mm.
need to apply, who know how to monetize their work, because these
Mm.
people know how to monetize. And the material is cringy for me, but I totally appreciate the democratization of production, in that these kids won't need to apply to an abusive studio that would just make them work Monday to Sunday and pay them peanuts. These kids work for themselves, and they're able to monetize their channels. So there is that scene. I just don't know how that could translate to industry yet. But the fact
Mm.
that you have kids making their own stuff, um, yeah. So you should check out Arkin. He was one of my kids. He was a kid who worked with me. His channel is decent. So, but he has a lot of copycats doing that sort of thing, and it's very cringy. So,
I mean, you talk to students these days and people, young people who are coming out of school, they don't want to be
Mm.
filmmakers necessarily. They want to be content creators. So
Yeah.
that,
yes,
that
yes.
kind of TikTok, like digestible format could
Mm-hmm.
become the new YouTube for the next generation. And we're kind of
Yeah.
in an older generation where we're looking at traditional, meaning series and films, but now they don't want to be really labeled a filmmaker. It's really about content, and it's a different way of thinking, which I'm also still learning, but the
Mm.
monetization of that, YouTube has its own way of doing it, but those things end up evolving and actually faster than how traditional, even figuring out our traditional within our Philippine context for the
Yeah.
market is evolving. But now to the mix is adding these short form, right? Which at some point there will be someone to figure out the monetization, and then we'll be like, okay, they were smarter than us.
The
Okay, so
kids, they know how to.
yeah, and it's I guess it's also because they've really been engrossed into these types of platforms and formats themselves. With the rise of the prosumer, with everything happening, the content creators are getting younger and younger. But sorry, so now we have questions from the audience. We have now opened the questions from the audience, and the first question we have here is: do you have recommendations for finding legal representation in the Philippines for entertainment law? We have a lot of IP firms, but rarely any with the negotiation experience required for TV and film.
I
Manny.
mean, if you're looking at firms, though, there are firms that deal with like the broadcasts, like with ABS-CBN, GMA. They do a lot of the negotiation. Obviously, if you're going to negotiate with ABS and it's their lawyer, then you don't go with them, but they have their own in-house lawyer. So
Mm-hmm.
there are, and in terms of like international, then there are also firms regionally you could look into for doing that. It just depends what your situation is, I think. But Manny might have
In our
extra insight.
case, yeah, in our case, we're just lucky to have a friend as part of the team who's actually working with ABS-CBN. But even so, the contracts actually starts with us because he's very busy, and of course he's paid more under that law firm. He's already a partner. So what we do is I find templates online, and then as much as I can, revise that with the details that I want, so that when I go to him, I have already a contract which he will just edit instead of asking him what to do. So there's a lot online. You can go. There are templates. There are free templates. So even just recently, we were applying for a grant. I had to come up with some contracts. So I started with going online, and then once I had the draft, showed that to the lawyer. So maybe that's a shortcut to maybe having to find an actual firm that really just does entertainment.
But the
I
key to
want
that is you're working with a lawyer who knows. So don't go
Yes.
in just with a template. You need a lawyer
Yeah, it
if
doesn't
you're going
stop.
to
Yeah, it
really
doesn't
negotiate.
stop there.
Yeah, you need
Yeah.
you need the lawyer. You need the
Yes, for
lawyer.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great
that's
question
very
because a
clear.
lot of people, that's a lot of creators don't think they will ever need a lawyer, but get a
Mm-hmm.
lawyer, find a lawyer in whatever way. Like if you face a contract, never sign a contract. Even if it looks benign, get somebody to read it. Get someone with law experience to read it. So, yeah. So just
Yeah,
find
so
a
that's really
lawyer.
that's factored in the expense.
Yeah.
So it's
Follow
really
up
part
question
of
to
the
that.
budget. Yeah.
Follow up question to that. How early should you get an entertainment or IP lawyer on board your project?
It doesn't have to
During
be too
development,
early.
yeah.
It's only when you're going to make the deal or if somebody is interested. But you have to look at kind of making sure, like if you're going to be at a festival, if you're putting your stuff on a platform, if there's any sort of agreement that or that, either is trying to license your right or take away the rights to your IP, without, and if you don't know what the complete scope of that is, then consult
Mm-hmm.
with the lawyer. But if you're still just developing the story and working it out, like you don't need someone yet. It's only when you go to market, meaning talking to people for money to change hands or figuring out like how you're going to go about showing this, but making sure you're protected, then that's the time you should talk to somebody.
Okay.
For my
Thank you.
first for my
Yeah,
for my three
please.
projects, I was always working with a lawyer per per contract. Like I'll look for a lawyer every time I need to sign something. But for our new project that me and Manny are working on, we're considering bringing a lawyer as part of the partners because of the amount of paperwork that I had to face anyway in the
Mm,
long term.
mm,
So we're gonna try it. We're gonna try bringing somebody into the fold early on and give him equity. So we'd always have someone to look over. I'm not saying it's the correct thing, like Mr. Tanya
yeah,
said.
yeah.
She's doing it later on, but this time we'll try working. We'll let you know the results of that if it
Well,
because
in your
that's
guys'
that's how.
case, in your guys' case, because you're doing actual production, you already have contracts. So you're at the stage
Yeah,
where you need a lawyer to do your
yeah,
Mm,
yeah.
talent
mm,
contracts, all of
yeah,
that. So, but if you're just talking about for you have a story and you want to go out and sell it, from that perspective, it's only when you need to engage, and at what level do you need to engage, right? But for these guys, they're in production. They need a lawyer from the get-go because you're doing
yeah.
production.
Thank you. All right, another question. I'm a comic book creator. I heard that in the US, studios won't listen to your pitch if you aren't represented by an agent. I would like to pitch my comic as an animation adaptation. Are local studios like this as well? Would they require me to have an agent?
But this goes back to our conversation about like accessibility to
Uh huh.
to studios and setting it up. And you can knock on doors, you can hustle, you can be machaga and like look for the friend of the friend of the friend. Like, definitely that's open to it. But the other way, which will give you more ammunition, is find your audience, connect with your audience, like build your comic book audience, because then they will listen to you more. That's your leverage.
So build the fan base, develop the community, which
Correct,
will get.
correct. Which at the same time you can hustle, but what are you going to show them, right? It's better if you
Mm.
go at them with like, look, see, all these people are connecting to it. They love it. That gives you more ammunition when you get your foot in the door.
There was that I don't know if I'm remembering the details right, but supposedly how Neil Gaiman's Neverwhere became a movie was because I don't know if it was Michelle Pfeiffer, a Hollywood actress or
Larry,
producer
Larry.
got or Larry.
Sorry.
Um,
Oh, I thought I
uh,
muted myself. I'm sorry.
um, a Hollywood producer or actress got into an accident, so had to stay home at a friend's house, and there was a copy of Neverwhere on the bookshelf. And the Hollywood person reads it, loves it, and says, "I want to make this into a movie." Which kind of just goes back to what Tanya is saying. If you've got a comic book, get it produced, get it distributed, get it out there, and it will eventually end up in the hands of someone who will find it interesting, right? You want somebody who sees the potential in your work, and not just somebody who, it's hard when it's a cold pitch and you just send it over hoping
Mm.
that somebody in the studio will like it, right? But if somebody reads it and is emotionally invested in it, and can see how to take it to the next step, then you're in a better position.
And
Nice.
to add to that, if the studio doesn't like your or won't take a look at your thing, don't be discouraged. It doesn't mean that your IP is terrible. It could mean a lot of things. Like in our case, even if something is great, we already have our plans for the next 7 years. So we literally can't do anything else other than the things that we are engaged in. So you can take a look at something. At the most, if it's great, maybe you could recommend it to a friend who's not doing something. I used to feel really bad because I'd present to all these key players, to all these producers, and they'd never produce my work, but then it was only when people were presenting stuff to me that's when I realized, okay, it doesn't mean that I don't like this. It's just that I literally
Take
can't
it
do
on.
this.
Yeah. Mm-mm.
So,
Man. Mm-mm.
um, like, and it goes back to what Miss Tanya said earlier, that it's like you need to go out there and just find the right partner, because it's really just trial and
Yeah.
error.
Yeah. It's really building that network and showing up, right? And just doing the legwork. Um, with that, we have another question. What advice would you give to creators in terms of keeping the IP for their work versus allowing distributors to acquire it? For example, does Netflix now own the IP to Trese or Hayop Ka, or do the original creators, publishers still own all or part of the IP?
Well, first of all, we shouldn't comment on any deals. That question cannot be answered in any public forum. So best not to ask it. But in the case of balancing how much you want to own your IP, and then
Mm.
okay, so that's several components, right? So completely owning your IP, yes, because that gives you the leverage to either, like in Avid and Manny's case, because they can do it, produce it however they want, right?
Mhm.
If you're dealing with a bigger entity, say like Netflix, which they ended up going to later, and then can figure out like what the deals is. In our case, we went to it earlier. Uh, we know the reality of what dealing with an international platform is. There, of course, the reality is when you do sign up with like an international platform, you will be giving
Mhm.
away some or all of the rights depending on what the deals are. But you have to also know what you're getting in return and weigh that to see, okay, then where are you happy? What's it about? Because you can keep all your rights and then it doesn't see the light of day, or
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
can give it up and it's the biggest audience you've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of factors that are weighing on that. And if when you look at contracts in the long form, this is why you need the lawyer. There's a
Yeah.
lot of also minutia that kind of comes with and things that you want to decide. So thinking about that takes experience, takes sort of like you need somebody who is, who knows what that means in terms of ramifications down the line, but you also need to know what your goals are and what sort of the reality of the market is. So it's a lot of thinking
Mhm.
in that case, but you have to be mature about it. You just can't be like, no, I'm going to keep it all and they can't own anything. Like, okay, you can keep it all. They might walk away, right? That's a
Yeah. Yeah.
possibility. So it just depends. What are your goals? And be real with yourself and then figure out, okay, then how do you do it? How do you go about it?
Yeah.
In
Avid, yes,
in
please.
in my Yeah, in my experience, when I was going to release Saving Sally theatrically, I consulted with my senior directors who are not and they simplified it. The choice really is: do you want to make money or do you want a big audience? Because they
Mm.
don't. It's very rare that those two will coincide. So it's either you choose to. So it's either you choose to let go of so it ties up with what Tanya said earlier that but that's a simple version of it. You have to make early on, especially if you are not Stan Lee or or Alan Moore or any big name. If you are just you, when you get the opportunity, the choice that you will be making will be to make money or gain an audience. So choose. So it's never both. So at the stage that we're even us that we're still there. That's what me and Manny would always always be faced. Like, okay, let's take this. Let's just give it to an get. So the way we work right now is we're choosing audience over making money. Like I've
You
experienced making
event
money.
you make the money with the wide audience. You'll get there. Trust me. In terms of there's trade-offs, but you will get to the point
Mhm.
where also getting to the wider audience actually means, and in for theatrical, that's the
Yeah,
That's yeah.
simplest is it applies to theatrical. But even
Yeah.
in terms of deals further down the line, you will be able to get both for sure.
someday. Yeah, but in the
You will,
beginning,
you will.
that's the choice you have to make. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really it's I guess for those who ask question, it's really understanding what is your priority, like both of you have been saying, and then to back up that choice, it's really to figure out um what you want, where you want your IP to be in the long run, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
in the case of Sinavid, it's they're strategic, building the audience and forming that kind of community to support the IP and the universe being built around it, right? So now we're down to our last curated question from the audience, and the question is, what advice do you have for creators who are afraid of putting their work out there for fear of it getting stolen? The person says that that person wants to start pitching but is worried about other people stealing their story.
That's an interesting question because that can also fall under like how original is your idea and how
Uh-huh.
what elements are there that might have been in the realm outside, because
Mm.
everyone can have similar ideas. The difference really is in the execution. And the more
Mm.
specific your execution is, that when you actually, Magoo, you know this for IP, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If you are sort of like say you had to go to court or you had to do arbitration between did this person copy this, it will boil
Mhm.
down to how that idea was executed,
Executed. Yeah.
when maybe, but it's really the execution and the specificity of the execution that will be called into question. So it's famously said there are no original stories, like everything is a copycat. But when you look at the story and how exactly it was told, that's when the story is different, right? It
Yeah.
might have an element or two that's the same, or several, but it might not be the same story at all. So, also, did you copy your story from somewhere else? Like, you have to think about that. What
Yeah.
influences did you have, right, coming
Yeah.
in?
Yeah.
So, you just kind of have to be realistically kind of weigh that out. But really, at the end of the day, it becomes of how you specifically executed that story, and that becomes unique unto itself.
Great.
We're actually speaking to a big conglomerate right now. Manny, uh, share what we had to go through just for them to take a look at our work, like
So
the
actually,
tons
yeah,
of.
we crafted another IP, and
Mm-hmm.
we're pitching it. And before they even give their comments, there's a contract that says your pitch can really be the same as other pitches. So
Mm.
don't go coming back at us if you see something that's very similar, because really there are a lot that are similar to yours. So I'd say to just go out and show, like ours is based on Philippine lore or folklore. So, and when you talk about, let's say, Nuno sa Punso, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you go to pitches, there are other Nuno sa Punso, but they're drawn differently and they're told different. The story is told differently. There's a tone that's, so
Yeah.
so those things. It's never gonna be the same, but you're basing off your ideas of something, because you're coming off from a background that's, I mean, we're Filipinos, so pare-pareho. So there. I mean, just put it out there. It's never gonna be the same as as an approach of another person. And
Yeah,
don't,
so
yeah, it's, yeah.
so that's the extreme. We literally had to sign a contract that says that our idea is not original, that we cannot sue them if they see something that is similar that they produce. That's the reality of it. And unless
Uh-huh.
you are Neil Gaiman or Bill Watterson or some big shot creator, these are the hoops that you need to go through. So
Mm.
yeah. So
But
So
even
it's
then,
it,
they know, like in Hollywood, there were like two volcano movies happening at the same time in like the late 90s, early
There
2000s.
were two
But
Bud
they didn't,
movies.
I mean, zeitgeist, right? Sometimes it's zeitgeist. In
mm.
our case, for mythology, we have a very limited like library of mythology. So it's always going to come up. And, having produced Trese, I'm not
Malam.
afraid. Yeah, exactly. But, I'm not afraid because we're all doing a shared thing. So, but the
Yeah.
interpretations are all different.
Yeah.
So don't.
Yeah,
So I guess
I
for the
mean,
person who's asking the question, don't be afraid.
my favorite example is how The Martian ended up becoming a novel and becoming a movie. The author, just loved this idea of what happens if one person gets stuck in Mars. How can this person survive? And he started to upload it on his website, but it got too clunky because people kept asking for copies of the chapters because he was uploading it per chapter. Eventually, Amazon opened up the self-publishing part of Amazon, So he uploaded it for his fans because he already had like what, a couple of hundred of people following him. It started on a message board, which ended up on a website, which ended up on Amazon. And when he went to Amazon, Amazon's the interface said, "How much do you want to sell this?" And he actually wanted to sell it for $0 because he just wanted to sell it to his readers.
Yeah.
But Amazon, the only option the lowest amount you could sell it at was 99 cents. So he said, and he couldn't find a way around it, so he just clicked 99 cents. And what happens afterwards, his fans picked it up, told other people, it became the #1 selling sci-fi novel on Amazon, which got the attention of Matt Damon. I don't know if it was Matt Damon, but he got the attention of the studios. But point is, he put it out because he wanted to tell this story, and he put it in a platform where the most number of readers could get to it, right? And the idea of a guy stuck somewhere, guy stuck on an island, guy stuck on a planet, guy stuck on a ship, it's, we've seen it. It's Robinson
Robinson
Crusoe.
Crusoe.
So yeah,
So-
Robinson.
Put in
Or
different-
Castaway, or
or yeah, exactly.
Or many
exactly.
other stories
So,
with that same spine.
yeah, I mean, if you're afraid, the biggest thing you should be afraid of is no one will read your work, more than getting
True.
ripped off, I think. So just
Agreed.
put it out there, and then the thing is, you get it out of your system, so you can move on to your next story, which might
All right.
be the better story.
Yeah, you need that creative catharsis just to get those IPs out there. I'm so sorry, everybody, but this is all the time we have this afternoon. Thank you so much, Tanya, Budjette, Avid, and Manny for spending your afternoon here with us, and sharing your insights, sharing your journeys, and opening your heart to all of those who are attending here. It's been a pleasure having this conversation with all of you, and looking forward to more of stories for your respective IPs down the line. So thank you very much, everybody. We turn this now over to FDCP.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for this exciting discussion, Tanya, Budjette, Avid, and Manny. Thank you also to Magoo for moderating this session. We hope this session gave our audience the motivation to continue creating animated films that can be brought around the world. We would also like to thank our participants for joining us for one of our ASEAN Rock Workshop series today. Please let us know your thoughts about our session by answering our IFIC survey form that is linked in our chat box. Thank you, keep safe everyone, and we hope to see you in our next sessions. Again, this is the International Film Industry Conference Online 2021.
Thank you very much to our panelists and moderators for a very engaging discussion. Thank you to our dear audience as well for tuning in. We hope to see you in our next sessions. For more details on IFIC, please check our official social media accounts. Facebook page, www.facebook.com/IFICPHofficial. Twitter, @IFICPHofficial. And Instagram, IFICPHofficial. Check out the full lineup of public sessions and masterclasses for this year's Film Industry Conference. Visit our website at fdcp.ph/IFIC.